Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here and learn about Toronto's next hottest neighborhoods. Hopefully, you caught a little bit of what I was saying in the beginning to Zane. Is a lot of times we talk about our research because we did a lot of research a couple of years ago, but this is the first time we're actually going through what is that framework. Like when we talk about the research that we do here, the data that we look at, what is that exactly? So we're actually going through that framework today, and then we're applying it to all of Toronto and seeing what goes through that filter. So it's a very interesting process and hopefully very educational for everybody that's attending. Let's flip down. Next slide, please. So we're going till 9. That's basically what this says. Let's go to the next slide, please.
The main event starting at 7:30. That's
main event starting at 7:30.
Yeah, and 9 is a soft cutoff.
There's a lot. Like it's actually very hard for us to take all the research and the methodology and back test it and use case studies and show it all in like in an hour and a half. So we will try our best. Yeah. Cool. Let's keep going then because there's a lot to go through.
Actually, sorry. What we'll probably do is get the main portion of the presentation done by 9, and then do Q&A at 9. So I think maybe Shelby, you can help us remind everyone as they start trickling in. But the Q&A, people can put it into the chat, and then we'll address all the Q&A right at the end.
Cool. So who is Volition? Next slide, please. So basically, we're the folks that run this event. Our mission is to help people navigate the quite complex world of real estate investing and be the team that has your back through that whole process. So the idea is to give the education on how to be a real estate investor successful in a very difficult market like Toronto. Then find the properties that you can actually apply your business case against. And then lastly, execute on construction, because oftentimes you want to do like, I don't know, legal triplex or laneway suite, you're going to need construction, and then help you rent it out at the end. So kind of end to end. And then that last point there is like, we figure it out for you. And that's that research, analysis, and synthesis that we're talking about. Next slide, please. So this is a bunch of credentials that we have. It's not to impress you guys, but to impress upon you guys that we know what we're doing. We're longtime real estate investors. We have quite sizable portfolios ourselves, and we've been doing this for a very long time. One call out is we've recently been featured on HGTV. We've got 2 articles with them now, and looks like potentially a bunch more lined up. So we're looking forward to our continued partnership with them. Next slide, please.
Oh yeah, we should have put that in here.
I did.
Oh, you did. Good job. No, the actual article.
Oh. Next slide. Cool. And as I mentioned, there's really the 4 areas of the business. We teach, so that's the advisory, exactly things like you're learning tonight. Realty, which is basically how you take the business models and apply them. So, if you want to do, let's say, a basement suite, how do you actually buy a house that you can do a basement suite? Does it have the setbacks, ceiling heights, egress, fire separation, all the things that you need to actually execute on the business strategies that we're talking about. Next thing is renovations, to actually build those business strategies. And lastly, leasing and property management. Next slide, please. This is a team. There's 9 of us. I know we welcomed Chris last time, but he's our newest member, so welcome again. He's getting in front of a lot of our clients these days, so he will be a very familiar face for everybody who's working with Volition. Next slide, please. And, a lot of people have like a dream board or image board. This is ours. We really try to be that eraser in the maze of investing to break through the difficulty. We try to be that team that we wish we had when we were first investors. Next slide. And there's just a reminder, we have this in here. For our clients, in case we missed you, please let Shelby know to add you onto the mastermind chat group. This is an exclusive group for our clients. It's like a safe space to talk about tenant issues, news, to talk about wealth management, whatever it happens to be, but like a safe space for landlords. Next slide. Cool. And let's dive into my market minute then. So I must have been sent this article like like at least 10 or 15 times when it came out. So when I get hit with an article this much, like gets forwarded to me, I want to talk about it because I think it's on a lot of people's minds. So there's this article. If you haven't heard about this, they had this headline. Basically, Core Development, a big private equity firm, is looking to deploy buy up about $1 billion worth of single-family homes in Canada. Now, this is I'd say it is a big deal, and it's probably why it's scaring a lot of people. This practice is very common in the US, it's been very successful down there, but is yet to actually find any success in Canada. And what's interesting is some of the largest US-based firms that buy up single-family residences in the US are actually Canadian-owned. So they're Canadian companies buying up US properties. So this is the first time this is being applied, in Canada. So $1 billion worth of real estate is going to be bought up probably in 12 to 24 month period, because private equity firms need to deploy their cash quickly. They can't sit on just cash because that's not making much money for their investors. Let's dive into the details. Should we be worried about this? So the first thing is, where are they deploying this money? And they call out a couple of we'll call them mid-sized towns: Kingston, St. Catharines, Londonderry, Hamilton, Peterborough, Cambridge. Those are the ones that came up. And their strategy is basement suites. So why do this? Number one, when you've got to buy up $1 billion, you can't have a model that has any difficulty. It has to be very simple. So anything beyond a basement suite is a little more complex. So they're doing it kind of the simplest densification model you can. They're targeting mid-sized towns. Primarily it's easier to buy out in a mid-sized town. It's a little less competition, and they can apply a simple business model to it. Because they can't sit and wait for 4 or 5 years to deploy all this money, they have to do it quickly so that way their investors can start realizing returns. It's very important for them to have an easy to execute, easy to scale business model. So that's what they're going after. So what does this mean for us as investors in Toronto? I wouldn't be as extreme in saying it's going to have absolutely no impact, because I know some people are saying this is not going to have an impact on us. We're in Toronto. What I think this will mean is if this is successful for them, it will say to kind of the world of institutional investors that, yeah, you can run this business model in Canada. So I think that is actually where, if I'm going to be concerned, something I want to keep an eye on, like how successful are they going to be? I think it's going to be very, very tough. In Canada, it's a little difficult to deploy that much money. At one point in time, Volition was even looking at what's considered a very small private equity fund of $50 million. And one of the biggest stumbling blocks for us is we just couldn't buy up that much assets in a 12-month period. It's just very, very difficult to find assets that work against a business model that quickly. So I think that's actually going to be one of their biggest stumbling blocks. If they are somehow able to do this, it will mean a very significant increase in rental properties in those markets. $1 billion in assets works out to about 2,000 homes. So, with 2,000 homes, that's a significant amount of increased rental revenue. So it'll be interesting to see what that does in terms of rental supply in these smaller markets. So, one of the questions is, why aren't they going after a place like, so what does that mean to us? And why aren't they going after a place like Toronto? Toronto is more difficult. We already know, if you've been following Volition for a while, you can't just buy a property, duplex it, and cash flow. That doesn't exist, right? We actually have an advantage in this scenario being smaller developers, because we're doing things that are inherently a little more difficult and don't have the same sort of time constraints that an institutional investor does. So, doing a triplex plus laneway suite is not a simple, easily repeatable at mass scale of $1 billion that a corporation can come in and do. But it's definitely something that an individual investor can. This is where being small is an advantage. So that's kind of my 2 cents on this article. I think there will be some impact. I'd love to see what it means in terms of a success as a business model. I'd love to see what it does to actual rental supply in these markets. As a Toronto investor, am I concerned? kind of. I mean, I want to know what happens with this, but I have no immediate concern about, worrying about an institutional investor coming in.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
What I was just going to add was that one of the reasons it's hard to you touched upon this, but I'm going to dive a bit deeper. The reason it's hard to deploy $1 billion, this amount of capital, is because you're buying properties on the margin, which means you're buying properties as they come up, and you, as small investors, this is sort of like you're talking about this a little bit with the Warren Buffett, with the large institutional investor versus small institutional investor. There's a reason why it's hard for Warren Buffett to continue with his historical returns, right? If you've got that much money, you've got to deploy it. It's really tough. Similarly, you want to buy the best properties, right? As small individual investors, I can buy the best properties as they start coming up. If I need to deploy $1 billion of cash, how do I ensure that I'm getting the top-notch properties every time that the properties are coming up? If I'm buying $1 billion of properties, I'm probably buying, well, I don't know, I'm buying thousands and thousands of properties.
Yeah, if it's like 500,000 an asset, it's 2,000 homes, right? You're looking at.
Yeah, it's 2,000 homes. How do I ensure that I'm getting the absolute best home or absolute best investment every single time when I'm trying to do that in 12 to 24 months, as Ming was saying? It's a tough thing. So yeah, it's interesting to watch. We'll be following them. Okay.
Yep. Cool. Let's keep on going then. Okay, so sales volume. I love these charts, but they're getting less and less useful. Like, I already don't like this aggregate data. If you've heard me present at previous meetups, for those who are new, I walk through the TREB data every month, and then I dive into the Volition data. So basically, the reason I show the TREB data is to show how we can have very contrasting information, both being correct, but both telling completely different stories. So if you look at the sales volume here, I've seen some headlines recently, like sales volume down 40% month over month. And yes, absolutely correct. If you look at March into April into May, sales volume is decreasing. So yes, that is right. What does that mean, though? It means less homes being transacted. And what people very quickly assume is, oh, less homes are being transacted, therefore housing prices must be affected. Let's go on to the next slide. So this is average home resale price. Okay, I see less homes are being transacted, but the average home resale price is relatively the same. Okay, so maybe if there's less velocity happening in the market, people are buying less things, and the average home resale price is pretty static for the last few months, maybe I'm going to see a price decrease happening, right? So this is also some of the headlines that I've been seeing, like, Toronto at the verge of collapse, and this is some of the reasons why. Let's go to the next slide. New listings are down, so we know that we're seeing a squeeze in inventory. So just less out there to buy, and I think the next slide is sales to listing ratio. And this shows basically how quickly sales are being picked up on new listings. So the listings out there for 30 days, how quickly is that property selling? And you see it's also decreasing here. So a lot of headlines right now are talking about buying opportunities coming up because they think, there's this assumption that there's going to be a slowdown on the market. So let's look at some other data on those 3 or 4 months. So let's dive into the Volition data now. Next slide, please. One of the things we do is we like to segregate downtown from uptown because we like to look very specifically neighborhood by neighborhood what's happening. And we also like to look at what we call the home price index, well, it's called the home price index, which is instead of looking at an average, which, if there's lots of activity in the top end of the market or the bottom end of the market, it skews the average. So lots of condos sell, you have a low average home sale price. The home price index tracks like-for-like properties. So, a 3-bedroom detached home, how much is your 3-bedroom detached home going to be worth in a month's time? It's a much better index to follow. So we use that, we track it neighborhood by neighborhood, month by month. So let's look at the next slide. The next slide tells a very different story. So this is actually looking at detached homes in the downtown core, those neighborhoods that I mentioned, and what's happening with those prices. And if you look at the last couple of months, in 2021, you'll see that even though The amount of home sales has gone down, even though there's a little less inventory on the market, and the sales ratio is going down. The actual prices of homes have been skyrocketing to the point where when we mapped out this month's home price sales, we said, are these numbers right? Like, we went back to the home price index pages to double and triple check that they were publishing correct numbers, because there has been, and we know this because we're active in the market, but there's been a very big lift of property prices in the last 2 to 3 months. So this is what is actually happening, even though the volume of sales is slowing down. Next slide. And we look at condos, it's a very similar story. And when people talk about the condo market recovering, it has happened very rapidly. So almost all the decrease in value that's happened from COVID. So if you look at this slide, kind of the March to March timeframe, March to February timeframe, and then in March of this year, the condo market picked up, and volumes were very high, but also prices. I was working directly with a client who was looking at Liberty Village, and we were literally seeing the same type of condo go up 10, 15,000 every week, when this was happening. So it's pretty much recovered to pre-COVID levels, condo prices now. Next slide, please. So when we start looking everywhere else, some of these markets outside of Toronto, we see a similar, a similar pattern here. So we have that circled because this is exactly one of the things that we said we wanted to make sure we kept an eye on, because when we put the data in, we're like, whoa, this is really crazy. It's a very big jump, but we did verify the data, and this is correct. We are seeing massive increases in these single family homes just in the last couple of months. That particular one is Willowdale, in case people are wondering what neighborhood that is. Cool, and that's it for the update. Any questions? Happy to put them in the chat, and we'll take them at the end of the.
Wow,
meeting.
19 minutes. That's a record.
Yeah, man, we got lots of juicy stuff in the main event to go through, so I wanted to be kind of quick on that.
No, that's great. Did you guys have any quick questions? Okay, good. I think Shelby, put that in the chat, saying that questions, if you have any questions throughout this entire main event, Toronto's Next Hottest Neighborhood, please put it in the chat, and we're gonna do a post-mortem, a Q&A at the very end. Cool. Let's do this. Or when are you taking off, Ming?
I'll stick around until about 7:35.
Okay. Hopefully you're back for your own section, because or else I'm gonna have to present it and I don't know what it says. Okay, so as Ming said, we're gonna approach this a bit differently than most. Most other people, they're gonna be talking about Toronto's Next Hottest Neighborhood. They're gonna be like, okay, let's get into like this. I'm gonna talk to you about the next hottest neighborhood. This is why. We're gonna take a step back. This is what we do at Volition. We take a step back. We approach things with a more strategic lens and using higher order thinking. And in doing so, this is the approach that we take. So we're going to introduce the filtering framework to you. The filtering framework is going to help us understand. There's a lot of places out there. How do I narrow it down, right? And then, but the thing is, how do I even know that this filtering framework is valid? So we're going to back test that filtering framework against a particular neighborhood, and we're going to see how that performs. And that will give you some confidence that this filtering framework is worth its weight in salt. Then we're going to apply the filtering framework to Toronto, and then we're going to analyze the results. We have a lot of neighborhoods. We're going to narrow it down, and we're going to take a look to see what comes out. And then after we've identified those neighborhoods, we're going to synthesize that into something meaningful and actionable. It's no use just to say, oh, this is the neighborhood. We want to show you what you actually should be looking for in the neighborhood, what we can invest in the neighborhood, the risks of the neighborhood, so on and so forth. So let's, without further ado. So like I said, where do I start? There are 158 neighborhoods in Toronto. 158 neighborhoods in Toronto. So how do I know if neighborhood X is going to grow faster or gentrify more than neighborhood Y? That's really what the question comes down to. Toronto's a very big place. not everything is going to go up at the same rate. Now, it's our job as investors to identify the areas that we think are going to grow faster due to gentrification, and then to put our own capital to highest and best use. So what do you look for in a neighborhood? What factors or features should I be looking for in a neighborhood? So really what it comes down to is this concept of factor analysis. We don't want to distill this down to those independent factors that really make the difference. The best way that this was kind of described to me once was, you have all the colors in the rainbow, but really it only comes down to those three colors. Those primary colors I can use to make every other color, right? These are the primary factors that are going to drive the success or failure or the growth of a neighborhood. So let's take a look. What is the single most desirable feature when determining where to invest? So if you're an existing Volition client, or if you've attended our meetups in the past, or better yet, you attended our masterclass in the past, you will know the answer. This is the answer. It's transit. So this looks a bit better than my slides have looked in the past because I used to do them in Microsoft Paint, but and I used to draw on a map. But this is a transit map. This is all of current transit as well as proposed transit for Toronto. This is a comprehensive map. And actually, there's a lot going on, right? Rewind a number of years ago, pretty much all we had was, our Yonge University line, our Danforth line, but as we started growing up and maturing as a city, we started, getting some more transit in here, Eglinton Crosstown and stuff like that. So let's get into this. First of all, the question is why transit? So Matt, why transit? Why is transit so important? You're saying transit's important. Why is it so important? If you are a 10-minute walk from a dedicated transit station in Toronto, we expand that to about 12 minutes, you will experience a 15 to 20% greater lift in rents and in property values. So when the market goes up, you will experience a boost of an additional 15 to 20% in rents and values. Similarly, or conversely rather, if the market dips and property values go down and rents go down, you will experience a 15 to 20% insulation from the reduction of property values and rents. Why? It's because it's always easier to rent out near transit stations. You always will attract more prospects, more leads. You will attract better tenant profiles, and you'll be able to pick and choose your rents. Pick and choose your tenants. Really, a transit map provides an investment heat map of Toronto. Really what it is, it's the Rosetta Stone for exactly uncovering the mystery of where to invest. However, transit is not the only story. It's a very, very important part of it, but you still need other elements. You need gentrification. The area has to turn over. It has to gentrify. You have to have commercial. You have to have retail. It's got to be a neighborhood. One of the best ways it was described to me was check to see if a Starbucks is going in there. Right? I mean, in Toronto, Starbucks are everywhere, but this was true a number of years ago. Starbucks would do a ton of research to determine which neighborhoods they wanted to go into, because not everyone's going to spend $7 on a latte, right? So, and it has to align with the Volition business model. Great. Let's say property values go through the roof because you're near a transit station. Unless it's a viable investment real estate business model, it's still not going to work. So these are other important elements. And then the last thing is just, we wanted to just call out the hierarchy of transit. Subway is better than LRT. LRT is better than streetcar. Streetcar is better than Union Pearson Express. And the up is better than GO Train. So it's mainly because of frequency. Is that right, Ming?
Yep. Frequency, like back and forth, like GO Train's just all one way. So there is some bi-directional GO Train, but a lot of it is meant for people who are commuting in the morning and leaving their jobs in the evening, and just doesn't is not very conducive to the target profile that we are try to get to, which are basically looking for transit not just to get them to work, but to get them to places of entertainment, places to eat, things like that.
Mm-hmm. So if you don't trust us, you can read this report. It's called the GCA Transportation Effect, put up by Rain. A lot of good research there. There's lots of research about transit. So again, if you don't believe us, then you can research this on your own, and I can point you in this direction. Okay, but the problem is that is still too many stations. How do I narrow it down? So this is now the filtering framework. So these are the transit considerations for the next hottest neighborhood. So now all that stuff previously was old stuff. If you've been following us, if you have been to our masterclass before, you would have heard it. This is the new stuff. So focus on, number one, focus on new transit stations. So that'll be a good bet to determine where to invest, because new transit stations typically means that the area is going to be slated for growth in the future. So you don't want to focus necessarily on existing transit stations. You can focus on new transit stations. So that's going to be our first filtering criteria. Next one is if there's going to be early, if we're early, or if it's early right now, or there's anticipated gentrification planned for the area, or even better, if a City of Toronto master development plan for the area, there's a lot of communities where the city and the planning department have actually planned out in conjunction with developers what this area is going to support. That's even better. And that, in fact, that's a necessary element of whether it makes sense to invest there or not. Next one, transit is good. Intersection of transit is better. So intersection of transit lines, that can be intersection between, let's say, two subway lines, intersection between subway and, let's say, new crosstown. It could be intersection of crosstown and GO. Intersection points are better than just regular transit stations. And the last one is, I mentioned this before, it has to fit the Volition investment business model, and I'll get into that in a few slides. Anything else, Nate?
No, just to emphasize that just because there is transit, or just because there is intersection of transit, that's just one of the filters to get through. But it also has to work as a business, because there are areas in the city which have intersections of transit which don't make good investments, and we'll talk about that further.
For sure. All right, so this is our filtering criteria now. This is what it looks like. So we got 158 neighborhoods in Toronto. So we go through a first pass filter, second pass, third pass, and fourth pass. So I just want to quickly show that to you before we're not going to do that quite yet. What we're going to do is we're going to validate and back test this filtering framework. We're going to back test it on Yonge and Sheppard. So as you know, Yonge and Sheppard, there was a development of the Sheppard line a number of years ago. And what I want to do is I want to show, or actually we can go through this example together and see what happened to that area. We want to see whether or not this filtering framework, whether there's any validity to it or not. So again, these are the four criteria, the four filters, and Yonge and Sheppard. So let's pass Yonge and Sheppard through the filter. Was it a new transit station? Yeah, there was a new transit station at Yonge and Sheppard. It was the Sheppard station, and then the new line was the Sheppard line, which went from Yonge and Sheppard east all the way to Leslie. Was there gentrification or planned development? Yeah, actually, Yonge and Sheppard turned into one of three of Toronto's city centers. Downtown is one, Yonge and Eglinton is the other, and Yonge and Sheppard is the third one. So there was lots and lots of development happening and planned for that area. Intersection of lines. Was there intersection? Yes, it was the intersection of the Yonge line and the Sheppard line. And did it fit the Volition investment business model? No, but we'll get into that in a minute. So,
which is why we didn't tell people to go invest at Young and Shepherd.
yeah. Okay. So let's take a look. So Shepherd Line, it was conceived or started being built in 1994 and was finished in 2002. It took 8 years. And then anecdotally, from its opening in 2002 to 2014, the Shepherd Line spurred over $1 billion in construction of new housing. So lots of stuff is happening along that line. And like I said, it developed Young and Shepherd into one of the 3 city centers in Toronto. Now let's take a look at this. So this may or may not be interesting to you, but I'm going to go through it anyway. It was interesting to me, so hopefully it's interesting to you. In 1994, a Willowdale bungalow was about $312,000, whereas a normal Toronto single family was about $209,000. Now in 2002, that same Willowdale bungalow was worth $484,000, whereas a normal Toronto single family was worth about $302,000. So that growth in that Willowdale neighborhood, so just in case you didn't know, Willowdale is the residential neighborhood directly adjacent to Young and Shepherd. It grew 55%. It grew by 55%, whereas a normal Toronto single family grew by 44%. So it grew over that time frame.
Also, you want to read a book?
I'm gonna put that guy on mute. Shelby, do you mind just doing a canvas to see if everyone's on mute?
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks. Yeah, so Willowdale during that development period grew faster than the rest of Toronto. Then let's take a look to see what happened closer. Well, let's look at current day. That same Willowdale bungalow is now worth almost $2.2 million, and that a normal Toronto single family has grown to $1.05 million. So what's that growth over the time frame of when after the station was built until now? That it grew by 449%, whereas the Toronto single family grew by 347%. So if I compound this annually, it means that Willowdale grew at 7.5% compounded, and the average Toronto house grew at 6.1%. So in my mind, QED, for those of you who don't come from a geeky background like Ming and I, it means that I've proven the proof. I've proven that which I set out to prove. So what does that mean? That means that we've illustrated that when transit plus gentrification combine forces, it can drive real estate values faster than the average. And in fact, even after it's built, it can continue to outpace even after the opening of transit. So like we said, though, we are not saying that Young Shepherd is a good neighborhood to invest in. It didn't pass last filter. This was just an example of being able to demonstrate that this filtering framework is valid. So,
and one of the things that we said is like this doesn't pass the Volition business model, and that's current day. But guaranteed, if Matt and I were investing in 2002, instead of getting drunk at bars, we would have bought duplexes or triplexes in the Young and Shepherd area, because the business model moves from area to area where it can be applicable.
Yeah, very good point. Okay, and
Thanks, Zane. I am heading over now. So I'll see everybody in about 20-30 minutes.
Oh, on that note, since Ming's leaving, I need Flo to prompt me when I miss stuff. So I need you to call stuff out, Flo. That's your job now.
You might not want me to call anything out.
I'm not saying call me out. I'm saying call out interesting facts or things I should highlight.
All right.
Okay. And then this is a completely irrelevant slide, but just a fun fact. When I was going through old data, there were exactly 24 houses worth over 1.5 million in 1994. I thought this was hilarious. It's almost like any detached house in Toronto is worth over 1.5 million now. So anyway, I thought this was funny. Okay, so now we're going to apply the framework. So we're going to take this now and we're going to filter this. That gives us 60 stations. Still too many. Let's go through which ones of those are planned for massive gentrification or have master development plans planned by the city. These guys here. Now, which of those have intersections of transit hubs? 5. And I have an asterisk beside Mount Dennis. Mount Dennis is not planned to have massive gentrification, so it didn't make it through this filter, but it does have a lot of intersection of lines, of transit lines. So I threw it back in here. So there's an asterisk around Mount Dennis. And then which ones of those fit the Volition investment business model? And there's 2 of them. So let's get into this. All right, so which one are we going to look at right now? We're going to focus in on Bloor and Lansdowne and East Harbour. So we're going to talk about those. And then we're going to talk about these 5 guys here: Queen and Spadina, King and Bathurst, Exhibition, King and Liberty, Spadina in front. We're going to talk about those 5 areas specifically. And then finally, we're going to talk about Mount Dennis and Science Center. So that's kind of the agenda from here on in. Okay. All right, so now begs the question, what is Volition's investment business model? We haven't actually got to it yet. Well, we need a full day masterclass to explain it. Literally, we held our masterclass in January 2021. Our next one is going to be January 2022. So it's too much to get into, but I'll try to summarize it in a nutshell. So basically, areas. We invest in downtown Toronto and the nearby residential neighborhoods to downtown Toronto near transit, where we see early or anticipated gentrification or city development plans happening. Tenant profile: professional educated millennials or Gen Zs working in downtown. Transient tenant profiles, not lifers. Usually they'll rent for 18 to 24 months. These guys are university educated, probably even with a master's degree, making 60 to 80K in downtown Toronto, working at a consulting firm, working in healthcare, working in professional services, working in an accounting firm, working at a bank, working in finance, working at a hedge fund, so on and so forth. You get the idea. Types of properties: duplex, triplex, fourplex, and occasionally condos and pre-con. So the investment strategy for those properties, either we can find them turnkey or we can do light renos after acquisition. Sometimes we add a secondary suite. Sometimes we do a legal luxury multifamily conversion. So we'll turn it into a legal luxury triplex or fourplex. And a recent phenomenon over the past 12 to 18 months has been laneway suites. And laneway suites are an extremely interesting business model as well. And it tacks on to all the other ones I just talked about. So what's the result? The result is, for investing in this type of business model, higher growth, lower headache, risk mitigated, cash flowing business model, longer term holds, BRRRR potential, buy, rent, or rent refi. And if you want to add a couple more R's, you could do rinse, repeat. And portfolio growth via the multiplier effect. So that is where, every 3 to 4 years, in theory, if you have the financeability, if you have the mortgage qualification, you should be able to double the size of your portfolio every 3 to 4 years if you're doing it right. So this is the what. The why, when, who, where, and how. So that's when you need to come to our masterclass. Or you can sign up for a membership on our website to access our January 2021 masterclass. And it's a full 6 hours of content to kickstart your investing in Toronto. And you can find it on our website right here. Okay, cool. Now, this is where you need to start paying real attention. So actually, before I get in that, Flo, is there anything else you want to add?
Oh, I'm good. I went to get chips while you were doing that.
So you weren't listening. Okay, good, great. Yeah, Toronto's new subway line. So this is called the Ontario line. So this is going to run from Science Centre all the way to Exhibition. So there it is, Science Centre all the way down to Exhibition. It's going to ensure that 255,000 more people are going to be within walking distance of transit. It also means that 57,000 more jobs are accessible in a 45-minute commute or less. And it's going to massively reduce congestion, primarily on this Yonge line. So as you probably know, there's a lot of 905ers who get onto the subway, a lot of, let's say, North 416ers and 905ers who get onto the Finch station and then come down. And by the time that you reach Yonge and Bloor, you can't even get on. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this. So the people who are trying to come east along the Danforth line and try to catch this train, switch trains and catch the southbound Yonge train, you have to wait because there's probably going to be a bunch of trains that you just can't get onto. Yeah, so Chris was saying you have to wait like 3 or 4 trains. That is a reality. So this was originally, well, I'm going to get to this, but anyway, this was originally conceived as a downtown relief line to alleviate the congestion. But this is anticipated to see a 22% reduction in traffic at the Yonge and Bloor station, a 16% reduction at Eglinton station on the Yonge line, and a 14% reduction at Union Station. The planned completion is 2027, and I wrote, haha. I guess everyone's on mute, so I'm gonna assume everyone's laughing. There's no there's no reality in which 2027 this is gonna be done. This was more of a Doug Ford, John Tory election thing than anything else. But anyway, all to say, even if this does take until 2029 or 2030, I think it was originally conceived 2029, 2030. Even if it takes that long, that's fine too. But anyway, the point is this is a big deal. You need to pay attention to this, okay? The evolution of this subway line. It was previously conceived as a downtown relief line. It's now called the Ontario line. Changes. The downtown relief line was just this dark blue component here. So what it was supposed to be completely underground, like a full-on subway for this entire segment here. Things changed, as they normally do. So it changed, and what was proposed now was extending it north all the way to Science Centre. So it added a bunch of stations and went through, and now it connects all the way to Science Centre. And then it changed even in the East York region and the East Downtown region. It was supposed to go through, Pape, Gerrard, Carlaw, Broadview, Shumack, Moss Park, and Queen and Osgood. What it's become now is underground. This light blue component is where it's underground. The pink segment is above ground or at grade. So this is above ground. Now this is underground. Now we're into sort of East York area. And then it's above grade again, and then it goes back underground. And then the lines actually changed. So Gerrard still exists. Carlaw got blown away. It moved west to Leslieville. Broadview got blown away, turned into East Harbour. The Corktown one got blown away. And then the Sherbourne station was the same. They called it Moss Park now. And then from here, it extended west, extended to Queen and Spadina. It extends now to King and Bathurst, and then to Exhibition. So, like those are some significant changes. Like it expanded quite drastically. So this is really interesting now. The point here is only invest after shovels hit the ground. Changes can and will happen. But after shovels hit the ground and after the funds have been committed, it's hard to go back. So only invest after shovels hit the ground. The caveat to that is only invest in this area after shovels hit the ground if you're depending on transit to be built in order for your business model to work in this area, if that makes any sense. What we're going to get to later today is we're going to show you that there's actually a couple of areas that overlap with our existing areas that we already invest in. Now you might be telling me, hey, well, I thought we were looking at, it's supposed to be like Toronto's new hottest neighborhoods. After going through the research and analyzing and synthesizing it, we actually realized, oh, wait a minute, some of the areas that we already invest in, those areas are going to be some of the best areas to continue to invest in because of transit. So anyway, but then you're actually going to see some areas that we're going to point out where we're going to say, we don't know what's going to happen in this area. We don't know if transit's going to be completed in this area. We don't know if the gentrification is actually going to follow. We can only say we'll continue to investigate and continue to follow.
Yeah, Matt, and you make a really good point, and there's a couple of questions on there as well about, if stuff will actually be built or not. And that point about investing after shovels hit the ground, like Sidewalk Labs is a perfect example because we've tracked that for years, and that all fell apart when Google pulled out.
Yeah, for sure. And for our clients who actually invested in or around that area, we knew what the backup plan was. Sidewalk Labs wasn't going to develop that area. Someone else was going to develop that area. So, ensure that you've got that plan A, but ensure that you've got the plan B and C and D and E and F as well. Okay, so timelines. We are here. So we're still very much in the public review and soliciting feedback. And in fact, well, I live in Riverdale. I just got a letter in the mail last week from Metrolinx saying that Metrolinx wants to go down on title of my property and all properties within 100-meter distance from the tunnel corridor. They want to go down and they want to put a notice on my title, which would require me to go to Metrolinx to get a permit if I'm going to do any significant renovations or building of any new buildings on my own property, on my own lot, which is like bonkers. But anyway, this is what they're proposing right now. And then all my neighbors on my street are all up in arms about it. So yes, anyway, we're still very much in this stage, public consultation and everything. They're saying construction is going to begin. I don't think so. This is probably this is dated. And anyway, they're saying that they're going to start construction on Exhibition, and then they're going to start construction on the East York regions. Anyway. All to say is that we'll continue to track this, but things will be delayed. So you can't count on whatever timeline that they're putting out. This is why I laughed when they the timeline that I think the official plan is still that it's going to be 2027. I continue to laugh. Okay, so now this is a simplified and integrated view of the transit map. So I showed you before that black Metrolinx one. There's just too much going on there. There's just too much. So the question is now, what do I actually need to look at? So we went through that filtering framework, and all those stations that fell out. We wanted to focus in on this area because, as you know, the Volition business model, we focus in the downtown area. So this is more of an expanded view past just the downtown. It has a lot of midtown areas as well. But we wanted to show you some of the most important lines. So there's a whole bunch of other lines. There's all those gold lines and stuff like that. So we want to show you what's the most important ones pertinent to investors investing in the Volition business model. So Yonge University, that's a subway line. That's the Danforth line. I'll go through what's existing. The up line is the brown one. This other line, this is the Barrie line. This is the Kitchener line. And then these are the lines that go east and up to like Stouffville and all those other places. So the new ones. This is the Eglinton Crosstown. So we didn't put every stop along here, but there's like 25 stops. It's as you probably know, if you've ever driven along Eglinton, it's been a mess for 5 years. Eglinton Crosstown, and then now it's this blue line. So this is the Ontario line. So now, where are the points of interest here? So we talked about, I mentioned it before. So East Harbour is down here. Bloor and Lansdowne is right here. And why? Well, intersection of transit, you can see, intersection of transit. Then I said I was going to focus on 5 areas in the, kind of the downtown area. These are the areas here. So Exhibition, King and Liberty, King and Bathurst, Queen and Spadina, Front and Spadina. And then 2 more speculative areas, Mount Dennis and Science Center. Oops. Okay, so let's get to the first one. So Flo, is there anything before I get into the first one?
No, you're doing great.
Okay, I haven't put you to sleep yet. Okay, East Harbour and Riverside. So this area right here, this is the area we're talking about, East Harbour. Where we're talking about really, this is the DVP, this is the Gardner, this is the old Unilever factory, and this is going to be a massive development. So this is it on a map. So you can see East Harbour is really a smaller area, but we've kind of highlighted the area of interest for us. Where are we? This is going to be east of the DVP, north of Lakeshore, west of Leslieville, south of Riverdale. This is Riverdale up here. Yeah, that's Riverdale up there. Okay. Points of interest. So this is already Pape Station right here, already a subway station, going to be the intersection hub. It's going to be an intersection for the Ontario line as well. The Ontario line is going to come down, and then it's going to, right around Gerrard, it's going to come above grade. So this is going to be Carlaw and Gerrard. That's where the station is. This is, for those of you who know, this is Gerrard Square here. This is going to be the next station. It's going to be called Leslieville Station. And this station is going to be East Harbour. Now, the East Harbour, the station is actually going to be here, but the entire East Harbour area is going to be here. East Harbour is a massive development. It's a 30-acre development. It's going to include 9 acres of green space and 10 million square feet of commercially zoned development. So just put in perspective, Yorkdale is 2 million square feet. It's going to be slated for offices, hotels, retail, institutional. It's going to have cultural uses as well. Right now, as of right now, it's not slated for residential. However, this is still under debate. There's still people on both sides who are like, oh, no, we want it to be residential, mixed-use communities. Mixed-use communities are stronger communities, all that stuff. Then there are other people who are saying, this is a it's a provincially significant employment zone. It's actually been it's actually been designated by the province as one of 28 provincially significant employment zones for the province of Ontario. So people who are proponents on that side say, we don't want this to be diluted down to include residential. People want residential, developers want residential because residential is way more profitable. Residential, they can build condos. I mean, you know this. This is why they build condos. It's incredibly profitable for developers. However, right now, it's planned to accommodate 50,000 jobs. And if they dilute that by including residential, then it's up for debate anyway. it's going to be a transit-oriented community, and it's expected to become the city's second busiest transit hub after Union Station. In fact, it's going to be known as the Union Station of the East. It's going to have a ton of connections, TTC connections, GO train connections, and like I mentioned, Ontario subway line. So yeah, it's something you definitely need to keep your eye out for. All right, so sorry, Shelby, is this where the video is supposed to play? I can't remember.
It'll start on the next slide.
Next slide, okay. All right, so I just want to point out a couple of areas, and then I'm gonna get to a couple of videos. So right here, you'll see, okay, actually, let's start here. Flo and I, we actually took a video in and around this area. We took a video around this area, so you'll be able to see us walk around. So we're calling out a few things specifically here. So Queen Street and Booth is right here. So when we reference that in the video, you'll know where we are. Eastern Avenue in Booth. When we call that out in the video, you'll know where we are. It's right here, right? This area here, like I said, it's this provincially significant protected employment zone. It goes all the way to Leslie, actually. So there's lots of things that are planned to be developed in this area as well. And then this area specifically is East Harbour. And then, as you know, in East Harbour, look, there's nothing here. There's a Unilever factory here. There's some residential around here. In Riverside, there's some residential too. And then there's one property I want to call out. It's 23 Lewis, and it's in here as well. So, okay, so I'm assuming I have to. Okay, so I'm going to play the video here. Can everyone see the video?
Yep, maybe just put it on full screen.
Full screen, all right.
Hey everyone!
Hey everyone!
Hey, so where are we, Flo?
We are at Eastern at Booth.
So there's Eastern, and you can't see it, but across the street says Booth. And we're standing here. Why? What's happening over there in that corner over there?
Little project called East Harbour.
Yeah, little projects. A little 50,000 job subway stop. Intersection of subway and GO lines. So yeah, little projects called East Harbour along kind of Eastern Avenue down that way. Sorry, my selfie skills are a little bit to be desired. So this area is prime for redevelopment. There's this big storage facility here, and there's Wonder Condos. So a bunch of our clients have actually invested in that. It's pre-construction condo projects.
There you go.
There you go. So what else do you want to point out here?
No, I think that's it. You can tell by the scale of construction how much is going on in this area.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. We'll pinpoint this on the map for you, and then we'll go talk about a couple of other areas as well.
Awesome.
Wow, look like those guys are having fun.
We just don't know, like, we don't know how to hold a cell phone to take.
Uh-oh. Shoot, sorry, these other videos were supposed to be queued up. So anyway, while those are queuing up, I'll just show you. So where we were standing right here. We were looking east along Eastern Avenue and pointing out East Harbour. And then the next slide was going to be, oh my God, my computer's freezing. The next one is going to be here, Queen and, oh my God. Sorry, my computer is acting up. Okay, the next one's going to be Queen and Booth. So we're going to be standing right here. And then there's a small red line here. And that's just to indicate that we're going to do a walk and talk. Okay, so this is the next one. Could you see the video okay? Choppy?
That video was fine.
Okay.
The slide was a little bit fuzzy, so there might be a bandwidth issue.
Oh, okay. Well, All these videos will be on our website. Right, Shelby? Are we posting them?
We will now, absolutely.
Actually, I think we're going to have a longer walkthrough of one of the properties as well. So, okay, next one.
Okay, so where are we now?
We're on Queen Street. You can see the streetcar going right behind us. Lots of great transit infrastructure, and we've got Jimmy Simpson Park here as well, right behind us.
It might be reversed for you guys, but whatever.
We're learning how to video, so what we've got over here as well is a relatively new condo. Thanks for cutting off my head there. But if we walk down a bit, or you can maybe see out of the corner there is the Starbucks, and so there's been a lot of mentioned in real estate so far, where if you see a Starbucks, this means gentrification is coming.
And
a patio. More
good
infrastructure.
tacos. But yeah, so we'll walk and talk. So we can see lots of stuff happening. That's the corner of Queen and Logan. So there's the Starbucks. So we're basically right now approaching Leslieville. That way is Riverside. So Broadview Hotel, tons of stuff happening around that way. That's closer, like Degrassi and some just on the south edge of South Riverdale. Over this way, we're approaching Leslieville. So Leslieville has been in a hot area for a very long time. Leslieville, harder to invest in because why?
Why? Because you're end users for single family homes, and the business models, the rents don't quite support the business model there.
Yeah, it makes it a bit harder to invest. That's not to say that it's impossible. You just got to find the right place. So
Bubble
anyway,
tea.
yeah,
Bubble tea.
So we got all the important stuff here. Yeah, so as you go down this way, you're going to be in the heart of Leslieville. Super nice, single family homes. Primary residence, a lot of that kind of stuff. We see the opportunity as ironically a little bit closer to the city, a little bit on the south side, closer to East Harbour. Around this area too, we should be getting a Leslieville. Should be getting a Leslieville TTC subway stop. So tons of stuff in this area. Lots of reasons to invest around this area. Anything you want to add?
No, I think we're good.
All right.
Matt.
This is Queen and Logan, and then
The Starbucks corner.
Yep.
Frank's Cookies, which is delicious, and the sign of gentrification. Row Farms for your bougie butcher as well.
and that is over there. Let's walk faster. Or
people need to speed up, just fast forward.
fast forward.
Yes.
Okay, fast forward. So this is. I think this is one of the listings that we are highlighting.
Yes.
And we're going to maybe do a walkthrough for you. So this is 254 Logan, and it's for sale. So we'll do a walkthrough for you after this.
Wow, that was choppy, wasn't it?
It gives you an idea of the neighborhood where they were walking at our pace.
Okay, anyway, there's only another minute or two. The next one is us actually inside the property.
6 feet. So when I stand here and I look from wall to wall, one of the key elements that we're always looking for to determine the viability of an investment property is how wide it is. So from wall to wall, this is about 6. And this is another 6. And so I would estimate this to be about 13 or 14 feet interior, which is kind of borderline. It makes it a bit tougher when we're into a narrower interior width for a property. Probably about 8.5 foot ceilings. I play volleyball, so I know that
Your reach is up there.
It's about 8 feet. It's a bit higher than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what we find too is that in this area, and that's why we have it as an area to consider upcoming, is that a lot of these houses and lots are not as wide and they are smaller, exactly as Matt is gesturing. So we have to be more creative about layouts and what we do to make the properties work.
So that is a pretty typical house in that area. I know because my aunt and uncle live in a house that look identical to this one.
The backyard of the same property. So this is the laneway, obviously. So when we're looking at laneway housing, there's roughly about a 5-foot setback. So that's right about here. So this is where the main floor would start. And then to maximize the square footage, you'd want, ideally, a 30-foot laneway house. Yeah, so your laneway would go from basically there to here.
Yeah, I'd say from where I'm standing to about where Matt is, so not huge.
Somewhere around here.
Yeah.
And then it would go all the way to the lot line.
Mm-hmm.
So when we build on 0 lot lines to make sure we go all the way to the edges.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing you need to keep in mind is the main wall from the house. In order where the laneway house starts, has to be at minimum 25 feet from the main wall of the rear of the house. So depending on how things work out, sometimes we even amputate
the rear extension there, yeah.
The rear extension of the house, if that makes sense. The reason it sometimes can make sense is that you can add that square footage back to the first and second floor of the laneway, and you can build lot line to lot line. So you actually get back a lot of that square footage and then some.
All right. Did you guys enjoy that walkthrough? I think Flo and I actually did a full walkthrough of the house and the exterior of that house. We're not going to show it here. We don't have enough time, but I think that'll be up on our website, or maybe follow us on our social media accounts. Where are we posting these days? Instagram?
Instagram,
on the bottom left of your
Facebook, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
So Matt, just so you know, we're about 7 minutes behind schedule, so just keeping that in mind.
Okay. Great. Okay. I'll try to go quicker. Okay. What else am I going to talk about? Okay. 254 Logan. That's what we just talked about. That house was right here. Full video walking tour, will be available on our website. And then I want to call it this one specific property, 23 Lewis. So 23 Lewis, located right there. This was a 28-foot wide lot, 28 foot by 135. And these people who live in a bungalow and who've owned it since 2013, I put in a proposal for a 4-plex and laneway, along with the rooftop deck and removal of 2 massive trees, and they're asking for 10 minor variances. So this was submitted in July 2020. The COA date was scheduled for February 17th, but then after the neighborhood uproar, basically everyone was opposed to it. They have deferred their COA date basically indefinitely until they can get support from the neighbors. Anyway, I took a look at this proposal. This is basically what the rendering sort of looked like. Front view, first floor basement was a unit, first floor is a unit, second floor is a unit, third floor is a unit, and then had stairs up to a rooftop. There was going to be a rooftop deck, and then a laneway, a 2-story laneway house, 1,700 square foot laneway house. So they maximized that, plus a 330 square foot garage integrated into the first floor there. So very, 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 very overly aggressive project. So they are running into a lot of headwinds. But anyway, I don't know, Shelby, are we doing a poll here? I can't remember.
Nope, not here.
Nope. Okay. Well, okay, let us know if this is something of interest to you, though. Maybe at a future meetup topic, we could dive in deeper into this application. We can actually see what the proposal was. We could see what the objections were, and what the processes looked like. This is to be perfectly transparent. This is not our client. This is this is just a development proposal that we saw that happened to be next door to one of the properties that I'm actually going to showcase in a couple of slides. So anyway, we just decided to investigate and do some research into it. So if that's of interest to you, drop a note into the chat to let us know if you are interested in us diving deeper into this proposal. On the left here was one letter of objection. On the right was another letter of objection, and then they just started outlining. They called it a 3.5-story structure, removal of trees. Anyway, something that belongs on King or Queen West, not on a residential street. It's gonna cast shadows, all this stuff, right? And
hey, Matt, just wanted to jump in. I think one of the things that, if you don't know anything, or not anything, if you don't know much about development, you don't know if a variance saying, see, Daniel just mentioned trees are sacred. But if you don't know anything about development, you may think like, okay, well, I'm just asking for a variance to take away one tree. Like, what big of a deal could that be? Or I just need, no parking here. Like, it's so close to public transit, it should be fine. It's only, unfortunately, experience through this process that tells you how important certain things are. And Daniel's absolutely correct. Trees are sacred. In Toronto, they are absolutely sacred. You have to raise hell and high water to get rid of one tree, let alone 2 trees. So if they're removing 2 very large trees, like if this was one of our clients, we'd have immediately said, do not try to execute on a project that requires you to remove 2 massive trees. You're just not going to get approval for it. So anyway, I just want to layer that on top, because you need to have that experience lens to understand what is really important, what you can get away with and what you can't.
That's a great point. And actually, I don't have it in here. I've been through the entire development proposal, and there's letters from the Toronto Regional Conservation Authority and Urban Forestry, and Urban Forestry is rejecting this as well. So there's I didn't specify that here in the presentation, but I can get into that. I can get into that more in a later one. But what I wanted to show here was they were basically pissing off everyone. This is everyone on their street essentially who was opposed to it. So this was this is going to face a lot of headwinds. Like I said, this was an overly ambitious project. I'm not saying this was a bad idea. I'm just saying this was very aggressive, and I'm just wondering, I'm just hypothesizing, maybe there was a better way to approach it rather than maybe they could have called, got all the neighbors on their side first, and then had conversations before they started, because basically everyone started sending these letters out when, you can see this, they received this just days before the COA hearing, right? Mm-hmm. The COA hearing was February 17th. So it was obvious that they hadn't really solicited the feedback from the neighbors, right? So anyway.
And it doesn't have to be like this. I think conversely, we did a project where we actually had 3 letters of support. So people actually wrote for us saying, hey, we're so glad you're coming to take this derelict property and turn it into something beautiful, because it's an eyesore in the neighborhood. There's ways to actually garner neighborhood support at COA. So just want to emphasize that the experience behind this is really important. Don't go into something like this blind. This is definitely something you want experience and help on.
So I'm just going to show this quickly, just because I saw Edward. I just quickly looked at the chat. He was asking what are the variances being sought. So anyway, I had put this into the presentation, but I pulled it out for brevity's sake. But now I'm going back to it, so I guess it's not going to be so brief. But there's lots of details here. Just to answer your question, the variances being sought was length, width, exterior stair setback, maximum height, another maximum height variance, max depth. They went over the density. Their front setback, side setback. It's
It's like everything.
It's too many. It's like they're asking for variances left, right, and center. Like that. This was never going to.
They want to have a convenience store. Like, it's like there's everything in there. Like I can't think of more. That's like everything. It's all the building envelope. It's the density. It's like setbacks. Like that's everything. Like
it's everything. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I did look at this. This is a density of 1. It had a it was a 28 by 135 lot. So I think it was about 3,800 square feet. So with a density of 1, you're allowed to have about a 3,800 square foot home. But then they went above that. It's like it was bonkers. And then, I mean, like, how many times have you seen a rooftop patio in a residential house? It's just like, oh my God, what are you trying to do?
But you know, kudos to them. They've got balls to try. Like, I wouldn't have done it. It's too tough for me. But
anyway, what I would just call out. So letters of support. They did manage to get 1 letter of support across the street from them. Mm-hmm. It's owned by this dude named Les Mullins, who I didn't know, but I did know this. Streetcar Developments, the president of Streetcar Developments.
Lives across the street.
Across the street. And of course he's going to support it because, I mean, he's a developer, number 1. And number 2, when I just Google Street View, there's literally an application on his own house.
Scratch my back, I scratch yours. And that's actually a tactic to understand what's happening in your neighborhood, to garner letters of support from other people who are also going to COA. Yeah.
So now we are severely behind schedule.
Okay, let's fly through.
Okay. Considerations for East Harbour. So yeah, I want to quickly show you that as we were walking down one of these streets, Flo and I, we took a picture. You could see there's a house here that has a slanted post for its balcony. It's an old house. Across the street from that, 2 new houses were being built. So like lots of stuff is still happening in this area, but you have to be specific. This area is still in the midst of transition, or rather specific areas are still in the midst of transition, and it isn't quite there yet. So you have to be very, very selective in this area. The general limiting characteristic of homes in this area is narrow lots, which make it really hard to invest because it makes the floor plate and the floor plans really hard. It makes it harder to fit, for example, 2 bedrooms if that's what, and especially, and as a consequence, the consequence of that is that it affects your rents and affects your cash flow. So, which means that neutral or slightly negative cash flow for a lot of these properties. How you offset that? You can renovate. You can put in slightly higher down payments. You can build laneway suites. So there are ways to still offset that. The plan here is medium to long-term holds. The rents and the transit and gentrification are still forthcoming. So, you know, this you do need to hold for a while in this area. The gentrification may or may not happen, but we think it will. I mean, the reality is it's already there, right? And East Harbour is going to be a massive boost to this area. But also keep in mind, transit does not always drive great places to invest. It has to have the gentrification. It has to have a great business model associated with it. So anyway, business models for this area: turnkey, duplex, triplex. The upcoming case study, we're going to talk about 19 Lewis. So 19 Lewis is beside 23 Lewis. Don't ask me why there's no 21 Lewis. But the one we just talked about was 23 Lewis, and the case study we're going to do is 19 Lewis, right next door. Multifamily conversions and or laneway suites, only for the few properties that make sense. Wider lots, laneways, stuff like that. And then condos or pre-construction condo options. There's Wonder Condos, Logan Residences, Riverside Square. So our clients have invested in all of these projects as well. So evaluating East Harbour. So new transit, check. Gentrification, check. Transit, intersection of transit, check. Fits the Volition investment business model, check, but with an asterisk. Properties do fit, but they're far and few between. You have to be very, very selective. Cool? Can I get into the case study now?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right.
I recognize that place.
What, the one to the left?
The one to the left.
So 19 Lewis. So where is it? Well, we know where it is.
That's the address.
It's right beside 23 Lewis. Turnkey triplex. This is a multifamily long-term hold at East Harbour. It was vacant, so you can set your own rents. It was turnkey property listed as 3 self-contained units on MPAC. Listed as 3 self-contained units on MPAC. That usually is sufficient for the purposes of financing in order for all 3 units to help you qualify for that mortgage.
Yep. Doesn't mean legal triplex, right? Legal status is only registered with the city, but we can't, in practical terms, you can't get a city search done in time before you actually put an offer on the property. You get an MPAC report pretty much instantly though.
Yep. The house, so second floor, it was a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, walkout, main floor, one bedroom, 1 bath, basement, studio, 1 bath. So as you can see, essentially these are all 1 bed, 1 bath. Again, that's the nature of a lot of the properties here. So this was a more typical property. 23 Lewis was 28 feet wide, which is highly unusual for that area. But you know, trying to squeeze in stuff into a narrow lot can sometimes means you have to settle for a 1 bed, 1 bath. Oh, by the way, and 23 Lewis, they were trying to fit 3 bedroom, 3 bath units in most of the main house. Okay, turnkey triplex. What do we like about this? Look, right near East Harbour, listed as 3 self-contained. Considerations: longer term hold might be necessary, at least 10 years, due to the finishing of East Harbour. Growth could outpace by how much? Don't know. It's not an exact science. And or the area could support possibly a lower entry point for freeholds, but with tighter or neutral cash flow. So some of the properties in this area actually are slightly less expensive from a price perspective, but you actually get less as well. And when you get less, that means that narrow lots, smaller buildings, maybe it doesn't have laneway potential, things like that. Okay, but let's just see what this might look like. This is very hypothetical, but we look on the left side right now. 19 Lewis. So 19 Lewis, 1.35. Okay, after your initial down payment and after market rents, you cash flow $300 or $400. Rent growth. We normally peg rent growth at 3% and appreciation at 5%. Let's say hypothetically that rent growth is 5 and appreciation 7 due to some of these factors, due to gentrification, due to East Harbour, due to 50,000 new jobs, due to all the things we just talked about. So let's look at what the returns look like. 10 years of cash flow, 194,000. 10 years of mortgage pay down is almost 300,000. 10 years of appreciation is 1.3 million. And so your 10-year total return is 1.8 million. Let's just say that elsewhere in Toronto for the same price, you could get $500 more in rent. Sounds great, right? Like I wouldn't say no necessarily to that. So your cash flow is almost $900 instead of $400, let's say. But then let's say that we go 3% rent growth and 5% appreciation, kind of your standard Toronto metrics that we normally use. So your cash flow, even though you start out with higher cash flow, you actually end up with less cash flow or about the same due to the lower rent growth. And then on the appreciation front, instead of 1.3 million, it's 850,000. Not bad, but just not quite as much. So again, not saying that this will happen, just saying that when we focus on areas that have lots of potential, this could happen. Anything else you guys want to add? Or is there anything you want to temper, Flo?
Hey, Matt, just got a question for you. This is Vinay here.
What's up?
Are these the rents that the units actually rented for, or just the assumed rents? Just because, like, for instance, right now, 1-bedroom units, even in the downtown core, aren't going for that much, right? You can find nice ones for $1,700 and stuff like that. So just wondering if people are actually paying a premium to not be in a condo and just be in a triplex, or if these were the rents you guys were able to get because the units looked nice, they were staged well, or anything like that.
You should really ask Ming and Florence.
Yeah.
I'm not boots on the ground.
Yeah, we were actually out at this property. So I think 2 of them were real rents and 1 of them was an assumed rent. that we have on here. It was about a month ago that we actually saw this place, but this does fit our cash flow analysis. We actually went through with the client at the time, and he's like, "Oh, should I go buy this now?" But it was like literally like the first place we had seen, so we said, let's sit together and actually properly figure out our investment strategy first before we proceed. But that's what I recall, that two were real, one was not. It was staged very nicely. There was lots of room. There's a backyard, so I can see why they were able to get these rents.
Okay, gotcha. And then the cash flow, is that assuming like with vacancy, repairs, and everything like that, or just versus mortgage or so?
Hard expenses. So
yeah,
property tax, insurance, gas, water, and hydro.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right. Now that we've had our fill of East Harbour, we're going to move on to the next neighborhood. So what did we identify? Is this guy right here, Bloor and Lansdowne. So Bloor and Lansdowne is not a neighborhood. So what is the neighborhood? The neighborhood is Dovercourt-Wallace-Emerson. And then a couple of years ago, they added Junction to it, which is stupid because
tell us how you really feel, Matt.
I know. Junction, okay, on this map, Junction is way up here. Okay, so Dovercourt-Wallace-Emerson is right here, right? Where my cursor is, and then Junction Triangle is here. So really this is Junction Triangle. So keep that in mind, because Junction would be more like stockyards.
Yeah, it is stupid. Like, and now when you look at listings, like literally the neighborhood is 4 names long. Like, I live at Dovercourt-Wallace-Emerson-Junction. Who's going to say that, right? but they did merge them in Treb.
Yeah. All right. So why do we like this neighborhood? What's going on here? So let's take a look. So at the we'll look at the blue first. Blue. This is a new GO station. This is the Bloor-Lansdowne GO station on the Barrie line. So, I mean, I don't even know how many of you know this. The Barrie line, you can faintly see it if you track where my cursor is. It actually already goes down this, but there's no stop here, so no one actually knows about it, right? So where you know this is if you're driving west along Bloor, you'll go under one underpass, you'll drive a little more, then you'll go under another underpass. You might not actually pay attention to that, but the first underpass is the Barrie line, and then the second underpass is the Kitchener line and the up line, the Union Pearson Express. So anyway, that's where it is. The line, the GO line already exists. They're just building another subway station here, which is going to scoot you quickly to Union Station. Okay, so that's the new transit that's happening in this area. Then development that's happening in this area. Up here, Galleria Mall. This was probably the most ghetto mall in Toronto. And it was at this prime area. Like, the funny thing is, for our clients, for Volition clients or people who have been with us for a while, you'll know our clients already invest in this area. I'm gonna get into this a little more later, but anyway, it was so bonkers that they had this like crappy mall sitting in this prime neighborhood. But anyway, they know that, so they're completely redeveloping it, and they're calling it Galleria in the Park. So this Galleria development happening at the corner of Dufferin and DuPont, the southwest corner. Okay. And then
in second place for second crappiest mall,
Dufferin Mall. I'll get into that in a second. Dufferin Mall. And the funny thing is, Dufferin Mall's tagline was Dufferin Mall. Really? It was actually Dufferin Mall. Really? Literally, that was their tagline. They were trying to reinvent themselves. But
I thought it was going to be Dufferin Mall, not Galleria.
Yeah, exactly. So Dufferin Mall, there's a planned development down here. And then combined with this new GO station, there is a new condo community planned right at the corner, southwest corner of Bloor and St. Helens. So the funny thing is, right at the corner of Bloor and St. Helens right now, on the southwest corner, there's a Valley Village. On the southeast corner, there's a strip club. So this area is slated for some serious growth. So, okay, cool. Is there anything you want to add before I move on?
Nope.
Okay, I'm gonna get into each one. So Galleria is the first one. So Galleria on the Park, Dufferin and DuPont. It's going to be an 8-acre park, 8 residential buildings, 6,000 plus residents, 3,000 square feet of retail, 20,000 square feet of office space, massive planned community. So look into it. Especially, this is especially pertinent if you, like I said, one of the things we were going to do, but we ran out of time, was we were actually going to map out all of our clients' investment properties in this area. We basically have investment properties on every single one of these streets: Lappin, Millicent, Armstrong, Wallace, Sam. Sam owns all of Emerson.
Yep.
St. Clarence, like we have, there's probably at least 30 or 40 or more, 50 properties in this area that our clients have invested in. So anyway, and that's not even including down here. Oh, so by the way, okay, I'll get to Dufferin in a sec. Okay, so the next one is the Bloor Lansdowne GO Station. So again, still in the planning stages, very early in the planning stages, but it's going to be a condo community with an integrated GO station. So very cool. This rendering is looking southwest. So this is Bloor. That street there is St. Helens. Right here currently is the Valley Village, and right there currently is the strip club. So it'll look different in a few years. And Dufferin Mall. So Dufferin Mall is going to be extended. They're going to make it bigger. What's interesting here is they're going to be building 1,100 purpose-built rental units, not condos. Oh, that's great. So the other place they're doing that is the Mirvish Village. So the Honest Ed ones. There's supposed to be a bunch of those are going to be purpose-built as well, purpose-built rentals. Big park, lots of retail, and lots of improvements along this tiny street no one really knows about, Croatia Street. It connects Dufferin and Brock. So this is Dufferin Mall right now. This is Dufferin Grove, which is a really big park. So this entire area is planned to be redeveloped. There's a school here, so I think they're working with the school and all this other stuff to integrate everything. So what I was just going to say was, technically, Dufferin Mall doesn't fall into this like Dovercourt-Wallace-Emerson-Junction triangle area. It's in kind of like Brockton Village, Dufferin Grove area. But they do exhibit a lot of the same characteristics, very similar characteristics. Okay. Other considerations: DuPont, a lot of like auto body shops, a lot of like, you're gonna drive along it, you're gonna be like, really? Really? This area is slated for growth. A lot of very underutilized. It doesn't look great along DuPont. The funny thing is that if you go east from here, though, there's a ton of condo developments. I think I counted there was like 13 or 15 new condo developments happening along DuPont between like Dufferin and Spadina. It's like 15 condo developments. So this area, like they're calling it the new DuPont. So this area is looking to redevelop, and then Galleria is going to be part of that, and then it's going to spill over into this area as well. I mentioned Valley Village and the strip club right at this corner, and then along Dundas, along this area as well. It's there's lots of industrial, things like it doesn't look great, but don't let that stuff deter you, especially along Bloor. There's some places along Bloor, especially around kind of like west of Symington. Lower income housing is right about here on the north and south sides. This area, I wouldn't let that deter you from investing in this area. Your first impression might give you some hesitation, but it's definitely worth a second look. Okay, business model. This area already works, and Volition investors already invest here. This is basically Volition's well-established business model in this area is getting a boost. It's an incredibly versatile area that supports numerous investment strategies. We do turnkey, like cosmetic renos, major guts, conversions, and laneways. So For Dovercourt-Wallace-Emerson-Junction, for us, it checks all the boxes. New transit, anticipated gentrification. So like I said, well, this area is a little bit of an exception. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily early in the gentrification. This is already a great area, but it's getting a boost. It's getting a boost because of the tons of stuff that's happening here. Transit, it's got intersection of transit, and it fits the investment business model. Low risk, high return, target tenant profile already wants to live here. The financials already work here. So, Ning.
Cool. So, one of the things I would add on to what Matt is saying there about, does the Volition business model work everywhere? Yes, but you have to be very careful within this neighborhood. It's not a blanket neighborhood where a lot of it will universally apply everywhere. And our case study is picked for this exact reason. So let's dive into this. Go to the next slide. So the exact location of this is, on St. Helens, just a little bit outside the proper area, but we would call this the same neighborhood anyway, but slightly outside and a little bit southeast, I would say, where most of the execution is happening against our business model right now. So the idea here is a multifamily conversion, long-term, buy and hold, using the Burr model. Within the house itself, the renovation would be second and third floor owner suite, so a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, main floor, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and a basement, 1 bed, 1 bath. So quite a big house and, a pretty big lot. At the back, we could have fit a 1,400 square foot laneway house. So a lot of bedrooms here and a lot of square footage. Next slide, please. So exactly what we liked, the big lot. It's a 25 by 120 foot lot, which is like, in Toronto, just palatial, right? 25 foot wide lots are quite rare, but it really allows you to build that massive laneway suite. And we've got the depth, 120 feet. So we have enough room between the laneway suite and the main house, still have that backyard area. You can still build a large laneway house. So we've got the square footage to work with. We love that it's detached. So if we have to do things like foundational work or exterior work or the renovation itself, we're not sharing any party walls, making lots of noise, impeding on our construction itself. And also there was an opportunity on the 3rd floor because it was really just a half story to extend it further. You could have made it an outdoor space. You could have had, like a nice rooftop deck. You could have extended the 3rd floor. So you have this massive, bedroom / office or studio upstairs. There were lots of things we could do with this house. But, bottom line, all these things I'm talking about, not beginner stuff. Like at a minimum, we're talking about legal triplex conversion, which is already a more complicated project, plus layering on a laneway suite. So it is getting just quite complicated and very capital intensive. You'll see in the later slides how much money we're talking about in order to do this. And that translates to long construction periods, right? So, the duplex plus adding on to the triplex and doing the laneway, plus we have to service the land for the laneway. We're easily talking about 16 months plus on a project like this. The other thing is, and you'll see why we're saying that this is an interesting project to look at because it's great for some people, but not great for others, is the laneway houses are difficult to appraise. And if our objective in investing here is to get all the capital out of this, this might not actually be the one for you. Because if an appraiser comes in and looks at a laneway house and doesn't value the laneway house, that's a huge impact into your ability to pull money out. So while it's great for the cash flow, great for this particular business model, if your investment objectives are predicated upon taking capital out in a burr, this is not going to necessarily work for you. And this is why we say it's very important to actually sit down and understand what you're trying to achieve in terms of investment goals, because not every triplex conversion necessarily fits what your investment goals are. Next slide. Did it go? Next slide. Oh, there we go.
Sorry.
So you're just an example of the laneway. It's a 1,400 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1.5, massive palatial laneway. Let's go to the next slide then.
So these floor plans were actually already sketched out by Landscape, right?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work with Landscape. I'd say the top when it comes to laneway design. When we work with them to get a property evaluated, they usually provide us with an idea of what the layouts could look like. Just so that way we're going in and we've got some sort of idea of what the potential could be. Because the reality is we don't have much time at all to react on a house like this. We got a couple of days to make a decision, and then we have to pull the trigger and buy. So they do provide us with some of these high-level plans, what it could look like.
Yeah, for sure. We do, they're a strategic partner of ours. And actually, we co-wrote that HGTV article together, the one that just got released, I think, last week on laneway housing. So I don't know. Hey, Shelby, if you can find that link, maybe you can drop it into the chat for people if they're so interested.
Okay.
HGTV. Okay, cool.
Cool. So let's go to the numbers.
Oh, sorry, Shelby, how are we doing for time?
Just keep trucking on. You're doing great.
I think we're like probably about 20 minutes behind now. So anyway, the sold price on this is 1.56. You're looking at a massive initial investment, 20% down of 373,000, 16 to 18 months, as I mentioned, to get the reno. And then the reno itself, you're looking at almost $1 million. Because when we do a legal triplex conversion of this size with this many units, it's going to be at least $500,000, and a laneway house as well, about 400,000. But what this ends up translating to is fantastic cash flow. Like our after refi cash flow is $2,700 a month, which is amazing. So why wouldn't everybody want to invest in this? Well, obviously, one, it's expensive, but let's put that aside. Let's say you had the money. Why wouldn't you want to invest in this? This is not necessarily the best investment for somebody who is looking to pull all their capital out and go buy another one. So if this is why is that? And it's the ARV. Like if you look at the math, 1.6, we're putting in almost $1 million in reno, but the ARV is not 2.6, it's not 3 or low 3s. It's only 2.4. And that's because this immediate area where this particular property is doesn't support ARVs that are that high. And this is what I mean. It's super, super important when you're doing these projects to work with, hopefully people like us to help figure this math out, because simply buying in Dovercourt-Wallace-Emerson-Junction triangle doesn't mean that it's going to work as in a particular business case. We actually have to go through and validate all these assumptions. Where does this work? Let's say all you need is this one property, right? Your ambitions are, let's say $6,000-7,000 a month additional cash flow, or this is the last one you're going to buy in your portfolio. Absolutely. Or it's you wanted something that you could stage. So you're like doing the main house first, get that up and running, and when you got a bit more capital, then you're doing the laneway. You could phase out this approach as well. So it definitely makes sense for a certain type of investor. It doesn't make sense for a certain other type of investor. Yeah, that's it. And if you have any questions on this case study, drop it in the chat. We'll answer at the end.
Yeah, and where things can also change is if and then when financial institutions finally get their act together and figure out how to evaluate these properties properly, that is also a watershed moment, because it then means that they can value laneway houses properly.
It's coming. Like, I don't think we're too far away from that happening, and that has a lot of work to do with what we're doing. People like Landscape, we're working with lenders to try to establish these values, because it's in everybody's best interest to have this information to establish these values.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we'll try to see how quickly we can get through this. So 5 neighborhoods now with transit and gentrification. So we're evaluating these 5 here: Queen and Spadina, King and Bathurst, Exhibition, King Liberty, and Spadina Front, against these filtering criteria. So this is just an article from Metrolinx. It was just talking about how these particular communities that we're highlighting are ones where, they're vibrant destinations in their own right. Tons of jobs being projected, tons of more people expected to be within a 10-minute walk of these new transit stations. So let's just get into it because we're running out of time. Exhibition. So Exhibition is already a GO station. think most of us know that. It's just south of Liberty Village, right? So Liberty Village is here, Exhibition's here, and BMO Field is here. The X is around here. What's happening in this area that's going to give it a boost is this right here. So the subway line is going to extend this way. So currently there's a GO station. In the future, it's going to be a transit hub between the GO and the Ontario line. So, and then it's going to serve Parkdale and Liberty Village dwellers. And importantly, it's going to be a transition point for Hamilton, Niagara GO riders to transition to subway. These people normally would have to go all the way to Union Station, but now they don't have to. They can transition here and then actually get even closer. Like if they, let's just say that they didn't work right at Union Station. If they worked more north of that, they could actually transition and then get onto the subway and then get closer to their work. Okay, so that's the exhibition. King of Bathurst. So King of Bathurst, currently, what do you got there? Streetcars. What are you going to have? Subway station. You're gonna have a subway station, a King of Bathurst. Like that's anyway. That's just bonkers to me that they could that they're going to do that. Like I think it's great, but King and Bathurst is such a busy community, right? It's King West. When in my youthfulness, my youthful indiscretion, that's where I used to go party, right? Like there's
Parkdale drink.
there's tons of condos and everything there. So they're getting a subway station. It's going to be at the northeast and southeast corners of King and Bathurst, and it's going to connect to the streetcars. The King streetcar is Toronto's busiest streetcar line, and just an interesting factoid: 9,000 households don't have a car in this area. So, as you know, anything east of like Bathurst, this is all condos, right? You might a bit north of here, you might find something. Anyway, once you go west of Bathurst, you start getting into some residential. So some residential freehold houses. So they do exist, but most of this area is still going to be serviced by condos. Queen and Spadina. Currently, streetcars, as you probably know. What you're going to have here in the future, subway station. So you're going to have one on the northeast and southwest corners, and those are going to be connection points to the streetcars. They're planning for 42,000 new jobs for this area but in another 20 years. And they're expected another 23,000 people would live within a 10-minute walk of this area. Front Spadina. So Front Spadina is notorious because of City Place. Right? It's funny because I used to live at City Place building right there, and I used to live at City Place building right there. So I used to be one of those people too. But like 50,000 people live at City Place, so it's like that's just a crazy community. But Front Spadina currently serviced only by streetcar, a north-south streetcar. In the future, it's going to be serviced by GO station. It's on the Barrie GO line. So this GO line already exists. It's going to connect to the streetcar, and they're saying that they're going to have linkages to surrounding roads, including Front and Spadina, which makes sense, and Bathurst, which I don't know how they're going to do that. But anyway, because Bathurst is all the way over here, and they're planning for the station to be here. So anyway, development, lots of proposed new office and residential towers in this area. If you like, the Well is right on this corner right here. Still a developing area. It's completely saturated by condos already, but it's still an area that's still going to have more development, especially with the incoming transit station here. Okay, and King and Liberty, currently serviced by the King streetcar. So this, I mean, if you live in Liberty Village or you have any friends who are here, you'll know the streetcar here. This is very similar to what I was talking about with the Yonge line. People wait for like 2, 3, 4 streetcars to pass before they can even get on a streetcar here. The future is going to be a GO station on the Kitchener line. Then it's going to be located on the north side of King between Joe Schuster Way, which is this guy right here. So if you know Liberty Village, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't know Liberty Village, then this is probably too specific for you. But anyway, Joe Schuster Way is here. And Sudbury is over here. So it's going to be located, you can see that there's already this line. This is the same line that goes through, that goes all the way up to the Bloor and Lansdowne. So just to put it in perspective of where this is, West Elm is here, EQ3 is here, so Landport Stadium's here. So just in case you want to get a better sense of where it is. Okay, so focus on new transit stations. So transit risk here is still very prevalent. So new transit stops are planned, but again, don't invest if your business model requires a transit station to be built. If your business model already works, then great, but don't invest before shovels hit the ground if your business model requires a transit station to be built here, okay? Okay, so gentrification. This is already an insanely popular area for professional millennials. Like, this is like millennial. This is the go-to place for them anyway. But even more is planned for these areas to turning it into thriving communities. Transit's good. Intersection of transit's better. So the exhibition is going to be a transit hub between GO and subway. The other ones are connections to streetcars. And then you've got a question mark around here for Volition investment business model. Yes, these are great areas, there's no question. But these areas are mainly condos, not necessarily houses, right? The business model here doesn't necessarily work for houses, but on an exception basis, the occasional freehold does work. So one of our clients just did a legal triplex conversion near King and Bathurst, for example. So it can work. You just have to be very, very selective. Condos may work as well, but you might be neutral and cash flow negative, and so you might need a slightly larger down payment. Or we need to find the right pre-construction condo. There's certain exceptions, but as a blanket statement, just to say, the Volition investment business model works here, that's stretching it. That's a far-fetched statement, which is why I just put a question mark here. I didn't put a check mark here saying, yes, this absolutely fits the business model. Flo, Ming, anything you want to add?
Nope, let's keep going.
Yeah, almost done. All right, warning, speculation ahead. So now we're going to focus on these two areas here. Up in this black circle here is Mount Dennis, and this one here is Science Center. So this is Mount Dennis. Take it away.
Yeah. So if you can go to the next slide. So those of you who aren't very familiar with actually, I don't know who is familiar with the Mount Dennis station. This is definitely an area that we don't really talk too much about.
Do you want to talk about where it is?
Sure. It's a little tough for me to see because I'm kind of like on multiple devices. But basically, it's the area that we have Eglinton. I think it's Eglinton. It's hard for me to see the detail.
This is Eglinton here. This is Eglinton here.
Yeah. So and then the station is kind of around where your mouse was going back and forth around there.
Yeah. And then this is Weston.
Yes, and that's Weston. So I can't actually see the names of the roads that you're pointing to. I think
it's on his phone, I think.
Yeah, because I had to log in different places for the other presentation that I was on. Anyway, so that's the area that we're looking at. And what draws us to the area is really, again, intersection of transit, right? We're looking at the new Eglinton LRT is coming across. That's going to be a big one. There's the Up Express is going to be there. GO Train is also going to be there, as well as they're developing a bus terminal. Now, that's kind of in order of things that matter to us. LRT is often, as we said, frequent. Up Express a little less. GO Train, it is a two-way GO Train line with all-day service. Bus, we really don't care too much about, but it cements this as a major transit hub within the area. The other big thing is ground's broken. Like they are actually building the station right now with all these transit lines that I mentioned in mind as an intersection for all of these. So next slide, please. So, what do we like? In particular, this neighborhood has lots of these houses and types of houses, which we're very familiar with. 2-story, 2.5-story, some with laneways, some with not, decent side setbacks, decent lots, that we know that the estate part, in our TIME risk, when we look at the estate part, the actual property fits the kind of model that we're looking to execute against. So far, so good. We've got the intersection of transit. We've got properties that look like they could be converted. Let's go on to the next slide. So what is it that, where are our hesitations in this area? Let's say transit is done, LRTs are open, all the intersections with all the lines all up and running. So what are some of the big red flags we have right now? Well, today, tenant profiles are not our A+ tenant profiles. This is not where young professional millennials, I don't call them millennials anymore, they're actually slightly younger than that. So like young professionals, kind of the mid-20s to mid-30s, this is not where they're choosing to live. Why? Because it's not a gentrified neighborhood. There's one or two cool things in this area, but it's pretty much a retail dead zone right now. If you drive through this neighborhood, there are few, retail shops. There's few restaurants that, kind of that demographic would be interested in going to. So this is very early in the gentrification cycle. The other thing is that there is development west of the station. So there's homes and stuff like that, kind of west of the station. But east of the station, there's nothing. It's just open kind of parkland right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that open areas and what they're going to try to do in terms of gentrification in the neighborhood. The other thing are rents and purchase prices. While purchase prices are fantastic, rents do not work right now for the Volition business model. And then also very importantly are the timelines. And what I mean by this is even after now ground is broken and let's say even trains run, how long is it going to be until we see that gentrification start to happen? I talk about this quite a bit, but one of the things we don't want to do when we're buying for gentrification is to buy too early in the curve, right? Neighborhoods will sit low for a very, very long time. And then one day things start to turn around, that kind of barrier is broken from the neighborhood and gentrification starts to shoot up. We want to be buying as it's already happening. We don't want to be too speculative and too early. And right now, this neighborhood is too early in that gentrification cycle. When is it going to happen? That's really hard to say. One of the areas where we expect it to happen, but hasn't happened quite yet, is Eglinton West. You go to like the Oakwood, Vaughan area. LRT is built, they're just kind of waiting for everything else around to open. Some condo developers, they've even bought land there to put up condos. But have we seen changes in, tenant profiles, rents, gentrification happening in the Eglinton West area? No, it hasn't happened. So you want to wait for that gentrification to start to take up before you invest any dollars in here. But this is a very interesting area to watch because it could end up being one of these areas where a couple of things happen and gentrification takes off. Next slide.
So I'm just going to go back a couple of slides so that people can see what you're talking about. So yeah, sure. the station is planned to go right around here, but then as Ming was saying, like look around here. There's not a lot of residential, and then there's big swaths of green space, and then look on the east side
of it. There's like nothing.
there's nothing around here. So. Yeah. We're in wait and see mode for this. So I wanted to just go back and just show them what you were talking about. I pointed out.
Yeah, this is the old Kodak factory. If you're familiar with kind of historical Toronto, this is where Eastman Kodak used to be. So next slide then. So when we run through our filtering model here, transit stations, absolutely. New transit stations, intersections, and transit stations, all of that's there. Gentrification? No, not yet. Maybe. So does it fit the current business model? No, but we really want to keep an eye on this area because if we start to see gentrification happen here, and it's possible we start to see some hipster coffee shops moving in, then yes, that's when we want to start looking at this area and evaluating it to potentially apply the Volition business model. But we're a couple of years away from doing that.
Cool.
But
Okay.
this is the next hottest neighborhoods.
Exactly. Okay, we're exactly 9 o'clock. Actually, no, we're exactly 9:01. I have just a couple more slides. So I understand if you can't stick around, but I'll try to be as quick as possible. Okay, next neighborhood, Science Center. So on this slide, actually, I want to point out two things. Science Center station is going to be built right here. And the first station south of that on the Ontario line is Flemington Park, and that's going to go right here. So you can see Science Center is the intersection of the crosstown and the Ontario line. So let's get into what's happening here. What's there currently? Nothing. There is nothing here. Currently, there's nothing. The Science Center crosstown station is being built. So that's in the midst of being completed. In the future, it's going to be a transit hub. It's going to be a transit hub between the crosstown and the Ontario line. So again, what's here? Nothing. Mainly commercial, light industrial, like industrial parks, but not even like good commercial. It's like, the old Celestica used to be here. Real Canadian Superstores here. It's a bunch of like medical office buildings and like, it's not a walkable neighborhood. There's no retail. It's not a community yet. So just to hammer this point home,
nothing here.
Standing, this is Google Map, and this is me standing right in the middle of Eglinton and Don Mills. This is me looking north, and there's nothing here. There's a superstore. This is the old Celestica, which they're now turning into a massive community. I'll get to that in a second. If you look west, there's the transit station that they're building. That's the the Science Center station. Just south of that is the Science Center. If I look south, so again, you can see the transit station. If I look south, on the southeast corner, there's a couple of office buildings and what have you.
Yeah, I think there's one converted condo there.
And if I look east, there's nothing. Like there's nothing here. Like it's pretty brutal. But what will be here? So Celestica has been demoed. This area is going to be called Winford Green. It's a 60-acre master plan community with residential, retail, office, and public space. So this is going to be a big deal. 125,000 square feet of community center facilities, 250,000 square feet of office, park space, new trails, 14,000 square foot of retail. So yeah, this area is gonna transform.
Just one note, why do we care about these master plan communities? Well, we almost always exclusively talk about triplexes and densification of single family residents. We still believe that's a gold standard. Sometimes pre-construction makes sense. And about 4 or 5, maybe 6, even 6 years ago, we were having the same discussion about Regent Park. It was a master plan community, demo had started, condos were starting to go up sale, $300,000. And now you'd be lucky to find like parking spaces, right? But this is why we care about it, because it could be a pre-construction opportunity. We'll see, but that's why we care about this area.
Yeah, for sure. So just to put it in perspective, so I think there's multiple developers who are all working together to develop this space. This is Don Mills going north, and this is Eglinton going west. And then the Science Center station is going to be right here. So just to orient yourself, the way that they drew this is actually backward. It's like kind of upside down. But I want to show you what's happening or what's nearby at least, right? So we'll start off. So this portion here, you can see is the master plan community led by Aspen Ridge, Lifetime developers, Diamond Corp, Context. So a bunch of developers are all working together. There's going to be close to 5,000 residential units in this area, plus all the retail and everything else I just talked about. This purple one is kind of the useless commercial and industrial parks that I was just talking about. So this is like Superstore and like these types of buildings. Like if you drive by, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's not a walkable neighborhood. It's like this type of 3-4 story walk-up type buildings and stuff like that. Nearby expensive neighborhoods. Not that it's necessarily going to have an impact, but I just wanted to call it out. You got Bridle Path over here, and you got Leaside over here. So it's not close enough to actually make a difference. In fact, you're closer to a lower income neighborhood in Flemington Park. But the Flemington Park station is going to go in here. Flemington Park is a lower income neighborhood. Lots of like public housing, lower income apartment buildings, stuff like that. Not a lot of existing low-rise residential. So our existing business model around duplex, triplex, and stuff like that would be harder to execute here, or at least the inventory here may not support that type of business model. But again, like Ming was saying, that could open up an opportunity though, as they start like on a few of these. A few of these streets here, they're starting to actually build condos. They're, like I said, there's 5,000 condo units are going to be going through this area here. We need to keep an eye on this area because there's lots of good stuff around here too. Sunnybrook, on the park. So like Toyota on the park is around here. A Tridel condo is going around here. Edwards Gardens, Shops at Don Mills around here. Aga Khan Museum. So there's lots of stuff around here to support it possibly turning into a great community. It's just, again, right now, it's desolate. If you're standing at the corner of Don Mills and Eglinton, there's nothing within eye-shot distance that's worth anything, right? But we'll see how it goes. This subway station here and the subway station here and this whole new development may transform this area. Yep. Risks. So you can, okay, so this is the master plan community. Just so you're aware, I'm not sure if you can actually see it. It goes like this. So that's why it's on like an angle. Risk for watching. So tenant profiles. Flemington Park is a lower income demographic. But on the flip side, the gentrification. So lots is planned for this area, but will it actually come to fruition? So that's where we have to kind of wait and see, shovels hit the ground, stuff like that. See what the opportunity looks like. Rents and purchase prices. Do the Volition business models work here? It's tough unless we need to possibly look at new business models. Pre-construction condos as an example. And right now, only the northwest corner is slated for gentrification. The northeast corner is Real Canadian Superstore and Industrial Park, commercial. Southeast corner already has a few office buildings, I think one condo. Southwest corner is green space and the Science Center parking lot. So really, out of this whole intersection is just one area that is slated for complete gentrification. So we'll have to see how things go, right? New transit station. So let's evaluate this against our framework now. New transit station, yes, definitely being built. It's already almost done. The transit risk is pretty much mitigated, right? Because the transit station for the crosstown has already been built, and now it's just a matter of connecting it to the Ontario line. Early or anticipated gentrification, lots is planned for this area, like the Winford Green master planned community, but will it actually happen? We're going to have to wait and see as to what's actually going to transpire in this area. But again, proximity to some nice neighborhoods. Transit is good. Intersection of transit is even better. So this is the intersection of the transit of the Ontario line and Eglinton Crosstown, direct access to downtown. Fits the Volition investment business model. Currently, it does not. Our tenant profile doesn't want to live here. Condos are going up around here, not a lot of freeholds. Don't know if the financials will work here, but we'll continue to watch this area and see if it starts changing and see what the opportunities look like. Cool. So in summary, this is basically what we just went over. East Harbour checks all the boxes with the small asterisks. Dovercourt-Wallace-Emerson-Junction checks all the boxes. And then these areas, Front Spadina, Queen Spadina, King of Bathurst, King of Liberty, Exhibition. These areas, it's got a question mark around the business model. Can work, maybe, on exception. Mount Dennis, New transit station, yes. Transit hub, yes. Gentrification, gotta wait and see. Fits the business model? No. But we'll continue to see if the area develops and maybe we can make a business model work here. In Science Center, new transit station, new transit hub, planned gentrification, gotta wait and see. Fits the business model? No. We got to see what comes up around here. Right now, the prospects around Science Center in terms of the gentrification seem better than Mount Dennis, but we're still too early. We don't want to be the innovators or early adopters. We want to get in once it starts hitting a little more mainstream. So again, in summary, these are the areas that we'd recommend kind of focusing on. These currently fit the business model quite well. East Harbour and the Dovercourt-Wallace-Emerson-Junction areas. And just a quick summary, a quick glance at the map again. These are the two areas we'd be talking about over here, Blue and Lansdowne area, Dovercourt-Wallace-Emerson, and then East Harbour down here. And then these are the condo saturated areas, Mount Dennis and Science Center. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good sense of how Volition looks at things when we try to look into the future, right? It's not an easy thing to do, right? We literally had 158 possible options to look into, and we've narrowed it down to what we think are the ones worth looking at and watching. So anyway, hopefully you found this interesting. I'm not sure what else we got here. Meng, do we want to go through advisory?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about, the business cases and how they applied to certain investment goals. If that's something that you'd like to go through, hit us up. What we really pride ourselves on is understanding deeply what you're trying to achieve in your financials, with your financial goals, and working on business models to satisfy those financial goals. So it's a free session, and yeah, I would definitely take advantage of it.
Shelby just put the Google Forms link into the chat, so that if you're trying to figure out what do I do now, like, great, you've just overloaded my brain with a bunch of useless information. What do I do now? What you do now is you sign up for advisory. You click that link, you fill out the form, and book a session with us, and then we'll have a chat. And next month, who do we got?
We got this guy. So, a good friend of mine, very successful entrepreneur and investor in his own right, Austin Ye. You might have heard of him. He's been in Toronto Life. I think he was in Toronto Star as well. And he's developed a very successful portfolio in a short amount of time. So he'll be presenting with us in July.
About what?
Good question. Actually, one of the things that we're ironing out is what does he want to talk about, and what do our folks want to learn?
Did we not say? I thought we narrowed it down to joint ventures.
Yeah, I mean, we would throw this out. Folks on our VIP chat, if you have anything you want to hear about, let us know. But yeah, joint ventures, capital raising, these kind of things he has a lot of experience with. How he was able to develop quite a successful investor pool of investors through LinkedIn. That was one of his big platforms. So if your aspirations are to have joint ventures and stuff like that, it'll be a great meetup to attend. He's also with him will be Mayu, which is his business partner. The two of them run something called the Rise Network. So they'll both be there next month.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So let's open it up to questions on the floor.
Shelby,
after the poll, I guess.
Did we have a poll? Oh, there it is.
It's there.
All right. Which state best describe? Hold on, I can't answer. I guess
I'm answering now. Shall we open up to the floor then and take questions?
Shelby, have you been queuing up the questions for us?
Yeah, we don't actually have a ton that have gone unanswered, but I can pop some in. So the first one what are your thoughts on the King and Dufferin area and its outlook for gentrification? So I put it in the chat as well.
What are your guys' thoughts on King and Dufferin and its outlook for gentrification? So, I mean, King and Dufferin, you're basically talking about Liberty Village, right? And Liberty Village, did that question come before or after we presented about?
I think it came before. I remember.
Yeah, it might have come before.
Okay.
Dufferin King puts it.
I mean, we really already talked about it. King and Dufferin, that area is, King specifically. They'll have the King and Liberty GO station, which we think will still be a boost for the area.
Yep.
So
cool. Let's go to the next question then.
Next one was with regard to the market update. Any insight into why E01 dipped?
I don't think it's can you flip back to the slide? I don't think it's anything like too significant. E01 is the East York neighborhood. Oh my God, what is the name? Slipping. Matt, that really nice school.
Jackman Plater.
Jackman, yeah, thank you, Jackman Plater. That's the neighborhood that E01 is. I don't think there's any strong reason as to why the neighborhood's gone down. There's been no major changes in the area. Likely, it's just it hasn't the transaction of the properties there have remained flat or relatively flat, right? So I don't think there's a big reason as to why it's gone down, because it hasn't dropped off significantly, if I remember from the data.
I'm just sharing our poll results.
Cool. You want to jump to the next question then?
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually only have one other, I believe. And what are your thoughts on Scarborough bordering Toronto? It's that area.
Scarborough does border Toronto. That is correct.
So we didn't get into it in today's presentation, but it's something that we talk about in the 101 masterclass, and that is our particular tenant profile. And just everybody I'd say everybody in general doesn't know how many kilometers their commute to work is, right? Like you ask somebody how long does it take to get into to work, they almost exclusively answer you in time. It takes me 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get into work. And one of the challenges with Scarborough is just a little too far. Our tenant profile sort of works and plays kind of in the downtown core. And when we start to get more than about 25, 30 minutes out of that downtown core, we lose that tenant profile, right? So Scarborough is getting out of that 20 to 25 minutes it's getting up to 40 minutes to get into the downtown core from Scarborough. Now there are improvements in transit coming, and if that means improvements in time, then it could become a contender. It's one of the reasons why Mount Dennis is interesting, is because with a GO train or with an up station going up there, you're changing that commute time now from being 40-minute commute to a 15-minute commute into the downtown core, because you're just hopping on the up. You got a couple of stops and you're downtown. So that is game changing for a neighborhood, right? And we only have so much time to talk tonight, but that's one of the reasons that that's what we're really interested in. That if we find that something similar is happening out in Scarborough, yeah, that could be very interesting too. Is that
Excellent.
it? No other questions?
Those are the only ones that hadn't been answered within the chat.
Yeah,
How do you feel about? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I heard somebody.
I actually the one that tabled the King Dufferin one from earlier in the chat, and I guess in my mind I was thinking more west of that towards Parkdale rather than Liberty Village. So I'm not sure which the questioner is just on the road. But yeah, that's what it read to me more about streetcars, not right by exhibition, rather than Liberty Village, because I'm a downtown snob. So
Parkdale is an interesting neighborhood, right? Because there are some properties that work in Parkdale. There's some massive Victorians down there, which you can turn into 4 or 5 units easily. And there are some people willing to pay good money to rent those places. But there's also a very, there's a bunch of lower income, purpose-built, rental properties. The Parkdale tenants group is probably one of the strongest tenant advocacy groups in Toronto. So it's not a strong yes. It is a very much property by property base. Personally, I don't like right in Parkdale proper. I would look a little more north, where you're getting out of Parkdale into like what is considered Roncy, but not really Roncy, but closer to that border between Roncy and Parkdale is more acceptable in my mind. So around Lansdowne, we have clients who purchase properties on Lansdowne. That's what I would be looking at, as opposed to kind of like Parkdale proper. Cool. Any other questions? I think there's one from Vinay. How do you guys feel about interest rates impacting finances / values? The triplex lending example you gave, ARV at 2.5, 18 months. In 18 months, what investment properties are back to having higher than personal
rates?
Oh,
I'm just
personal
saying,
rates.
think about it in 2018, when, if you had investment property, it would be like, 3.5 to 3.9 fixed. Even if that personal, you could get like, 2.3 to 2.4.
Yeah.
I mean, as you guys know, like the amount of delays, or even trying to get joists right now is next to impossible for half these projects, right? Let alone the prices going up every other week, right?
Yeah.
Like the example you gave, you put about like $550 to reno the main house, which are you guys underpinning the basement as well of that one, or no?
I can't remember if there was a basement underpin. I think there was. Wasn't there?
Yeah.
I think it was low. Sorry, like it. I did see it like 3 weeks ago for half an hour. But I can't remember all the details. But I think it was. I think we did need underpinning in that property.
Yeah. So I mean, like $550 to reno the main house that actually seems very cheap if you're underpinning it as well, right? Like the Laneway house seemed for $400K, 285, 300 square foot. That seems about right. But with like delays and everything like that, and material costs going up, what do you think happens if, say, rates go up to, say, 3% for an investment property instead of what you can get for like 2.2?
Yeah, I mean, like if we're looking at interest rate and interest rate impact, I think the hard thing to predict is the speed at which interest rates are going to rise, right? And that's not just going to impact, like the St. Helens business case. It's going to impact lots of business cases, unless you're in and out very quickly, like a 4 to 6 month time frame. If your renovation is at all significant, 12, 16, 18 months, there is this risk, right, of time. And what does that mean in terms of rising interest rates and therefore your exit refinance? That's what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, you go to refi the property, but prices are higher, even just to get some of your money out, it's at a much higher rate. Hopefully next year they don't, keep stalling rent increases, but
so I mean, like absolutely that is a risk. And like I said, the hard part is like how quickly are the interest rates going to rise? My feeling around that is that interest rates will rise quite slowly and with lots of warning. And it's because, while we are exposed in these kind of construction projects, if you're the government, one of the more politically riskier things is just normal people who are overextended. And I guarantee you there's quite a number of people who have bought more house than they should, more mortgage than they should, because current interest rates are so low. And if those interest rates start to rise quite quickly over the next 5 years, when they go to renew those mortgages, they will be, SOL, right? Because they won't be able to go back and refinance their own house, right? They won't qualify for a mortgage on their own house anymore. So I can't imagine the government, committing political suicide by raising interest rates at too fast of a pace without significant warning. So that's kind of how I feel about the speed of interest rates rising. And hopefully within like a 18-month period, even like a 2-year period, we don't see like a 2% increase or something in interest rates. Hopefully it's much less than that. But should you do it as like part of a sensitivity analysis when you're looking at your refinance? Absolutely. Like I would look at various interest rates. I would look at various increased, right? Like an increased interest rate on the refinance to make sure that you're still able to cash flow, or you're pulling out whatever, or you can qualify under these under a higher interest rate.
Yeah, I mean, not to downplay the importance of the question, but really it's a question across all investment properties, right? Like anyone who has an investment property, or anyone who is up for mortgage renewal, or anyone who's looking to refinance. It's not specific to this one case study, but in this one particular case study, it happened to have pretty massive cash flow at the whatever interest rate we used, probably 1.75 or 2 or something like that. So yeah, I would, the numbers, I think it was like $2,700 cash flow or something like that. Like it would probably reduce the cash flow, obviously. Probably reduce it by, I know you have to run the analysis, but $500, $1,000, you're still into like, I don't think it doesn't automatically dismiss the validity of the business model. It just means that your cash flow is a bit tighter.
Yeah, but it's an excellent point, right? Like you do want to plan for these, and like we do have limited time, so we can't talk about like all the risk mitigation and analysis you should be doing on a property. But like I said, I would absolutely do sensitivity analysis around interest rates for any cash flow analysis, future cash flow analysis on a property.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
We had one, what was it, from Daniel? What are your thoughts on neighborhoods with express transit, limited stops like bus or double fare, but can have the time to get downtown versus streetcar? So we don't love streetcar either. By the way, it is better, but it is also not great unless it's on a dedicated streetcar lane. So in Matt's old world, where he had like the awful MS Paint drawing, what he actually drew out was dedicated streetcar lines like St. Clair, Spadina, things like that, where they're on their own little path, because then you're not battling with traffic. While express anything is great, if you are intermingled with traffic, you're not express, no matter what the label actually says, right? You still are stuck in traffic. So that's not a direct answer, but I hope that makes sense. Like basically transit that is not having to intermingle with cars is much preferred.
Sometimes there is an express lane.
I think sometimes an express lane.
Yep. So that does help. But anyway, to answer your question, we normally focus on dedicated permanent transit. Buses can change on a whim. Not that they do, but they can. And so the problem with buses is that you don't know if it's going to be there or if, in the future. So we don't really account for buses because of the traffic component, and because buses are not dedicated or permanent. But express transit, I suppose that's something that's a bit more interesting. But again, it's still not something that's necessarily permanent.
Our demographic too can be, so our target demographic, subway is acceptable, streetcar is acceptable, but many of them draw the line at a bus. So they would not be caught dead on a bus. They rather take Uber. So it's just something to consider, also our demographics preferences of transit.
Yeah. Cool. Next
question. What is your thought on Grand Central Mimico master plan gentrification? I'm less familiar with the master plan work that's happening around Mimico.
I don't I don't know the master plan around Mimico either. I will say I actually love Mimico as an area. Personally, I actually wanted to live there.
Really?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily like it's a beautiful area. It's a great community. Like it's a very like family friendly community. That does not necessarily make it a great investment area though, because the question is, do tenants want to live there? I want to live there because I have kids, right? I want to live there because it's family friendly. But is that what tenants are looking for? That's the question you got to ask yourself. So our current tenant demographic doesn't actually go out to Mimico. So I know that there's a bunch of condos out there. So obviously, it's not this blanket statement that I'm making is not true in every single instance. But generally speaking, the tenants that we normally attract want to be closer to downtown than Mimico. Mimico does have a GO train station. That said, I'm not familiar with the master plan that's happening in Mimico. So thanks for bringing it to our attention. Maybe we'll take a closer look at it.
Yeah, I'm familiar with kind of like it from a end user perspective. I do have a lot of like personal residence clients who look for properties within kind of the new Toronto, Mimico neighborhoods. One of the not for it's kind of a sweeping statement, but new Toronto, Mimico, one of the things that hinder it from a appreciation standpoint are the schools in the neighborhood. They're some of the worst in the city, especially the high schools in the area. So it's good for young families, but a lot of young families start to exit places like New Toronto once their kids are high school age, and that is reflective in the housing prices, because people are often like, when they're looking on like House Sigma or something like that, they're like, oh, I can get down to New Toronto, decent house, decent price. But that's one of the caveats in the neighborhood. Let's see what else we got here. With work from home model looking like it might stick around, has it changed Volition strategy on location design and build? Yes. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what has it done in terms of our strategy? So it hasn't changed our location or strategy too much. And part of it is driven out of the data that we found a little earlier on in the pandemic as to where people were moving. So we looked at rental prices, for example, and we were looking at rental prices by postal code to see where the impact was. And what we had, hypothesized from the data is that it looks like people are moving to more space and just out of the downtown core itself, where things were really tight. So we were already investing in those neighborhoods. So it hasn't changed too much the acquisition strategy, but the design of our builds or the types of properties that we're buying, absolutely. So, before we were probably okay with like a 700 square foot or, 650 square foot plate, or even smaller for a 2-bedroom. Now we highly advise you're looking at least 800 plus square feet for a 2-bedroom floor plate when you're doing a conversion. We highly advise you get some outdoor space, decks, backyards, whatever it happens to be, because there's a big demand for that. People aren't leaving the city, but to your point, they're working from home. They need they need dedicated office spaces. They need like backyards to hang out in. This stuff is much more important. So it has impacted our design of our builds and also the types of properties we're acquiring. Next one. Let's when you're estimating 1.5 to 2 year completion time frame for a triplex conversion, is that factoring the step approach to go from single family to triplex to avoid levies? Yes. So we are looking at a step-by-step approach to avoid development charges. If folks aren't aware, you can't just go build a triplex. You can get hit with very expensive development charges, $50,000, $60,000 per unit. So it can completely kill your business case and your wallet. Yeah, and then I saw his note on Mimico High being really ghetto. It hasn't turned around. I don't know all the high schools in the neighborhood, but I do know that is a big impact. Cool. Any other questions or anything that we might have missed?
I had a direct, I had a DM from Edward. He just said, I think he was talking about East Harbour and residential high rises. So he said there are RFPs out for residential high rises for East Harbour. I'm fairly sure I've seen them. So you're not wrong. These are, I know that that they're actively trying to figure out how to develop this with some residential. I think he's talking about how I was saying, you know, it's supposed to be a dedicated commercial zone. That's going to go through. That's going to have to go through a lot of debate, though. It's not not going to be an easy. It's not going to be easy for them to push through residential in that area. Not saying it won't happen, but it's going to be a hard battle, because I know that there's pretty staunch supporters on the commercial side to keep it as a commercial zone. I had a DM from someone who said, yes, interesting. Also note that they likely received a letter from Metrolinx, and it is very possible it is located on the land to be used for Ontario Line. I don't know what this was in regards to.
I mean, I had a notice of expropriation before. Is the question around, like, what does that mean if you get a notice of expropriation for transit?
I'm not sure.
I don't know if that person's still there.
I don't know. No, I don't think they're still here. It was DDF, and they might be talking about Lewis. Was I talking about Lewis during this time? Anyway, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
A notice of expropriation is not a lottery ticket. A lot of people think it is, but usually you have to fight to get a good valuation on your property. So it's not a good thing to get expropriation notices.
And there's someone who said, "Thank you so much, Matthew and Ming. It was very, very interesting. Great presentation."
Okay.
I don't know why I read that.
Let's wrap it up then, so we're not holding everybody any longer. But if there are any further questions, then please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at info@volitionprop.com. You can follow us on social media. We're trying to post a little bit more of what we do there. We actually do so much stuff, but we don't have time to get it posted on social media. But we're at volitionprop.com if you want to follow us there too. Cool. Anything else to add before we wrap it up then?
Oh, why don't I put this out since since it's on top of mind. The Volition team is expanding.
Yeah.
So we are currently, right now, looking for an investor realtor to join our team. In fact, we need two. So if that interests you at all, please reach out. We haven't posted. We've only recently put a jobs description together. So, you know, but, you know, happy to share, happy to have that conversation with you. But yes, we're looking for 2 investor realtors to join our team. Reach out if you're interested. Do we need anything else?
No. We'll see everybody in a month from now. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.